Step number 1. Iron out your piece. The panel is made out of 100% cotton. Therefore, the iron can be set to cotton or medium-high heat. Step number 2, you're now going to lay out your fabric pieces in order. First, lay out your batting. Second, you're going to want to lay out your wall panel, a dozen flowers. Third, you're going to want to lay out your backing. You're going to want to make sure as you lay the pieces down that you smooth them out to make them as flat as possible. Step number 3. I'm now going to use the clips to clip the fabric together. I like to start at a corner piece. I'm going to make sure and smooth out that area before I clip it. I'm going to continue to make my way around the quilt and clipping and smoothing for 3 corners. As you see, you can see the wall panel through the muslin backing. That will be important when you start sewing. Now that I'm at my last corner, I'm going to make sure and once again smooth out and then clip. I'm now going to make sure and leave a gap. You're going to want to make sure it's either about 4 fingers wide or around 4 inches. This part is important. Step number 4, it is time to sew. You're going to want to make sure that your needle and your starting point is about 1/4 of an inch from the border on both sides, vertical and horizontal. This is the part that is important to make sure that you choose muslin that is see-through. If you can't see the panel through the muslin backing, it will be difficult to see 1/4 inch into the panel. As long as you have a basic sewing machine, you can do this part. I have a machine that can stitch quite a bit of stitches, but it's not necessary. You can do the basic stitch if you want, or you can do one that has a more secure stitch. At the end of the day, it is up to you. I'm going to start off by setting my stitch. This ensures that the stitch won't come undone. As I continue to sew the rest of the piece, I'm going to make sure that I'm still 1/4 inch into the panel. Once I get to a corner, I'm going to lift the foot of the sewing machine. I'm going to carefully turn the fabric. I want to make sure that when I set my foot down, I'm still 1/4 inch on both sides of the panel. I'm going to continue until I'm about 4 inches from my opening. Here, I'm going to make sure and close off my stitch. After you complete your sewing, this is what your piece should look like. Step 4. To clean up the sides, I'm going to cut around the seam. When you get to the corners, make sure you round them out, like this. This will ensure that when we get to the corners, they will easily pop out. Once I get to my opening, I'm going to want to make sure and leave about 1/2 inch of batting, fabric, and backing. This will ensure that you have enough fabric to close the opening. Now that the edges are nice and clean, it's time to turn it inside out. When you look at the hole, there's going to be 2 holes. You're going to want to pull the one that has the panel and the backing. You're just going to lift and pull it out. Once you have your fabric turned inside out, you're going to want to make sure that your corners aren't inverted. You can use your thumb by sticking it in the hole and wiggling it until the corners pop out. Step 5. It is time to close off your panel. First, you're going to want to cut off all the extra batting, not the backing or the panel, just the batting. I chose a thread that matched the border. If you don't have that color, it is no problem. Just use the one you have. This part can be a little tricky. You're going to want to use clippies if this is your first time. You're going to want to make sure and fold over the backing and the panel inwards. You're going to use the clips to make sure that the fabric stays in place. Make sure you pull and tuck in the corner. You want the opening to close and look like the rest of the border. It is now time to sew. You're going to lift the clippies off, set your stitch, and then sew along the edge. Since turning the fabric inside out can cause wrinkles, we're going to iron it before we quilt to ensure that it's going to be nice and flat. Step 6. It is now time to quilt. I always like to cut the thread first so it's not in my way. If you don't have a quilting machine, you can always use your sewing machine if it comes with a quilting foot. If your sewing machine doesn't come with the quilting foot, you're most likely able to order one. When I quilt, I like to start from the edge and work my way in. So with that being said, I'm going to start on the border. Whenever you sew along the border, make sure that none of the backing is peeking through. Whole cloth quilting can be difficult, especially when first starting out. Please remember that it takes practice and time. But with a lot of straight and diagonal lines, this piece is great for beginners and those that want to get into whole cloth quilting. Now that I'm done with the border, I'm going to choose a square to start in. I like to start with the corner piece. I also like to try and do one continuous stitch without having to bring my foot up, so I will always come up with a way to do that first before I start sewing. I'm first going to go around the white square. I then am going to come up and go around the pink square. Before I go all the way around, I'm going to go in and do the octagon, and then the small triangles. I then am going to go into the large triangles. After the triangles, I'm going to be where I started. That's where I'm going to lift my foot and tie the knot and move on to the next square. Now I'll show you how it's done. Halfway through the video, you'll see I had to stop the camera. I moved on to the square, but don't worry, I started exactly where I left off. choosing which block to do next, you can go this way or that way or random. Once again, I like to work outwards going in. It's ultimately up to you. You're going to continue and quilt each block until you are finished. If you'd like, you can always add your own twist to the piece. You can always add swirls, more stitching lines. Once again, it's up to you. That's why I love whole cloth quilting. Although it's the same panel, each piece looks a little different depending on the person that is quilting it. That's the end of the tutorial. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more of this content.